This is Friday Football Focus. The time is 6 minutes past 6. Tony Mepham's joining us in the studio this evening, our Manx Radio football correspondent, along with Chris Bass Senior. I can tell you that the conversation's flowing off mic, so we should have no problem this evening discussing the biggest issues concerning Manx football. There's a full programme of fixtures in the Canada Life Premier League tomorrow. Douglas Athletic against Old Boys, Douglas Royal versus Corinthians, Peel travel to Laxey, the 2:30 kick-off, St Mary's versus St George's, Ramsey against Colby, and St John's travel to Rushen. But let's talk about St George's because they haven't won in the last two games. You have to go back as far as October 2009 for the last time they failed to win in three games. So the question, I suppose, and I asked you this a couple of weeks ago, Tony. I think it was a bit premature.
Yes, Chris.
Well, are the wheels coming off the St George's wagon, or is it far too soon to say?
I think it's far too soon to say. It's football, isn't it? There may be a couple of loose nuts, but I think we haven't performed as well as we can do. I think there's a lot of factors into why we haven't performed well. But some of those will be, kept private. But then there are other things like we've had bad weather and we've had the interleague competitions and the junior interleague competitions. And when it all boils down to it, we've not had that continuity of games. Where in the past seasons, I've always said the team with the games to play at the end of the year generally goes on to win the league. And at this moment in time, that might ring true, but it might not. I mean, there have been some good performances this year. In particular, I thought that Rushen played better than St George's. They look sharper. They certainly look a little bit fitter than what they did last year. Well, they've turned their fitness round even from when we beat them 6-2 earlier in the year. But that's what can happen. It's football, isn't it? Manchester City are running away with the league, and everybody thought St George's were going to do the same. But unfortunately, it's not worked out like that for us. St John's played very well at Glen Crutchley Road when we drew 3-3. If I was being honest, then we shouldn't have really won that game either. But we managed to score 2 goals late on in the game. I think Tony had already reported that we'd lost 3-1. No.
And we scored, but when we scored 2, we perhaps should have got a third, which would have been very unjust on St John's because they played really well that day and they worked really hard to get that reward. Rushen, they as I say, they were fitter, sharper. They looked a little bit more hungry, so we've had to go back in-house and sort a few things out and see if we can, change one or two things for us to put us back on track again. Do you find, because a lot of teams will say the incentive is already there when you play St George's because of their success in recent seasons, you don't need to tell them twice to up their game. They know they're going to be in for a tough match. So they bring their A game every time. Is that something that you notice?
I think that works both ways. I think in the past we've had games where we've turned up to, and before we've even got stripped, we've won the game because teams are like, oh, we've got St George's today. And to be fair to the lads that played for St George's at that particular time, what they were saying was probably true because we were that far in front. We're not as far in front now because they are getting older. And I don't just have to argue with the players, I now have to argue with their wives and girlfriends as to why isn't he at training? Because he's got kids. Forget the kids, get to training. But that's the way I was, and thankfully my wife was very good to me and allowed me those to do that free will. Very supportive, but as I've been told by my daughter, times are changing, women are becoming more dominant, and the lads now seem to do as they're told by their partners rather than do as they want to. So that has a big part to play in it.
Well, there are certain socio-political changes that have happened over the last couple of 100 years, but I think it's remained a fact throughout that you can't win an argument with a woman. So I think you're at a loss anyway there, aren't you, Chris?
I think you said that, not me.
You said that the squad in general is getting older. Is that what you're putting this down to? The fact that other clubs are narrowing the gap, if you like?
I think as time moves on, they do. I have to understand that they have other commitments. rather than being the dominant person where, you know, we demanded their interest, we demanded their dedication. They're still dedicated footballers. They would love to be more dedicated than they are at the moment, but like I say, they have outside commitments, and we've had the weather and we've had the interleague. And, you know, that also, when you get that inconsistency in games, then you're not getting to your optimum fitness levels, and you can get more injuries because you're stop start. So that's had an effect on the team. So yeah, there's quite a few things in there, but you know, we'll iron them out, and we're still in the box chair at the moment. We've dropped the least points than any other side in the league at the moment. So there's always going to be a fuss made when St George.
I suppose that's
basically everybody wants the wheels to come off, don't they? When you've won the league 12 times in 14 years, you know, there are people that are going to be very disappointed that we're ruining Manx football. So though these guys are jumping up and down now saying this could be them out.
And I suppose that is credit to the job that you've done over recent seasons, because other teams will go 2 games without a victory and nobody bats an eyelid. It happens to St George's, and as you say, everybody is jumping up and down.
Well, yeah, that it's to be expected. You have to accept every eventuality. You know, when the day comes when we don't win the league, then that's because another team has tried harder, stayed fitter, scored more goals, and, you know, got more points. So it's up to us now to try and, you know, turn things back in our favour. Like I said before, that we are in the box chair. I mean, Corinthians will be very disappointed with the way their season. They started out with such high hopes, and then to be 3-0 up at St Mary's and draw 3-3. So they'll be thinking, you know, 1 more, 2 more defeats, and they'll have no chance of winning the league. It'll have gone.
That was extremely disappointing for Corinthians in the last outing, not to capitalise on the defeat that St George's suffered.
Big time, but looking back on it, and it's not sticking up for Chris. Yes, St George are a very good side, and the players are still absolutely superb. But I think this year, Russian are a lot stronger. Old boys are a lot stronger now, with the 2 boys coming back from Australia. Corinthians are stronger. Peel are stronger. Russian, you know, are the one I think at the moment. And 4-0, you know, what were we up last time, Chris, when we played you at St George's last year? Were we something like 4-1 up at half time, Corinthians, at your place? Was it 4-1 up at half time? You know, and we just didn't know what was going on. And then, as Chris says, you know what's going to come, and St George's came back 4-3, and the same against St John's. But I think I watched the game against Peel with Corinthians, and the first half we did all right. They had a plan, and the plan worked, because suddenly Sean Doyle was taken off in the second half, black and blue. And then we found it difficult, and then we got back into it towards the end. But to be 3-0 up against St Mary's at half time and cruising, but since then I've heard 1 or 2 things that happened, or maybe, you know, one of our players was not concentrating on the game and more concentrating on having arguments with St Mary's players, and you can't really do that. But, you know, we're still in there. Russian are very much in there, so are Peel. Old boys, it'll be interesting to see now with the stronger squad that they've got. But St George's are still the team to beat. And I think it's great for Manx football, because everyone's talking about it now, as where before, what Chris was saying, when you come up against St George's, you knew it was going to be tough, and you were going to find it hard to play football. And now with the players getting a little bit older and injuries in as well, it's harder. And I think it might just give Chris a bit of a fresh lease of life with some of his players as well.
I think, well, as one door closes, another one opens. There's a lot of young kids in the football club that have been given opportunities, not as many as I'd like to have given them as at the moment, because the scores haven't gone as to my liking. Had they done so, then we would have given far more opportunity, and they'll get the opportunity, because the opportunity comes because either you're winning or you need to try something different. So they're working hard in training. They are dedicated, so yeah, I'm sure 1 or 2 will, you know, get their opportunity.
That's a really interesting point about giving youth players a chance, players who possibly haven't appeared that many times for St George's. You've got a tight-knit group of players who have won silverware after silverware after silverware. What influences your decision when you say, I think I'm going to rest you, or just put somebody else there, see how they fare, because you must have an emotional bond with these players which you've had and enjoyed so much success with.
Resting's not a question in Manx football. There's not enough games. If you were playing, 2 games a week, then over a long period of time, then yes. But resting players in the Isle of Man you don't need to do that. What the players need to do in the Isle of Man for the whole benefit of the island is to actually work harder. And Corinthians have done that off the back of last season, and they followed on this year. Russian are working harder. Steve Faulkner has always made Peel, work hard, whether they like him or not. He makes them work hard, which is good for the game. And what we're finding is that if all these teams work hard, things can change. And that's been my view for many, many years. I've come up here and people have said, oh, you're ruining football. I said, no, get out and train 3 times a week. Run yourself into the ground. Don't walk off the pitch, crawl off the pitch. If you don't crawl, you've not worked.
Leave everything out there, I think is the old mantra.
That's the way it should be. And if we did that, then we get these closer games, more games on the edge. And I think Rick will turn St John's if he can get another 2 or 3 players and get a more consistent base. I mean, they really performed well against us, but did they give the same effort the following game and the game after that? It's not just the big games you've got to get yourself up for. It's the ones when you're playing, show the respect to the team that's at the bottom of the league and work really hard against them as well. That's the way. And winning is a habit, and so is losing. So we've got a tough game tomorrow against St Mary's, who are starting to improve. They're starting to work harder, according to Carl and Steve. So that'll be a tough game. We've got injuries for tomorrow. There's no Chris, there's no Callum. I don't mind telling people, but they're not gonna be playing tomorrow because they're injured. So we have to, use the players we've got in the best way we can. And we talk about young players. We've got young Joe Quayle. We've always given youth an opportunity at the football club. We've given opportunities to Sid Batty, Johnny Quirk, Jay Kamada. So we're always giving opportunity. And if it's there for them to take that and show that I want that shirt, we gave opportunity to Adam Long. And thankfully, St George's had their little part to play in Adam's progress. Look where he is now. Now, if Adam had stayed at Union Mills, I can guarantee you 1,000% he would not be at Wigan Athletic. He just wouldn't.
I mean, that's impossible to say, so I'll move on.
No, it's not impossible. I'm telling you, it wouldn't happen.
Let's look at the league table. Corinthians played 11, won 8, 25 points. Peel played 11, won 8, 25 points. St George's played 8, won 6, 19 points. Russian played 8. They've won 6, 18 points. It's wide open. How confident are you that you can emerge from this close pack of teams who are all challenging and retain your title?
It's Christmas. We've made it entertaining, haven't we? Because if we'd have won the last 2 games, everybody would have said it would have been over. They've packed up. They've gone home. So the point is, we've had a little blip. I'm not going to say we might not get another blip, somewhere down the line. But for a team to actually, really want to win the league, then they are now, from tomorrow, they're going to have to go and win every single game for the rest of the season to stand a really good chance of winning the league.
And you set the bar high. How important is it to have points on the board rather than games in hand? Does that affect you at all? Or I suppose from your point of view, it's a simple mission. You've got to go out and win games.
I think having points on the board it's always good. But for instance, how many games did you say Corinthians have played?
11.
11. So maybe Corinthians get to the end of the season and their season's finished, apart from playing St George's. They might not play us for 5 or 6 weeks. Who are they going to play in those 5 or 6 weeks? So sometimes having the games at the back end, you get a continuity of playing. And at the back end of the season, I know that players would much rather play on a Saturday and play on a Wednesday and play on a Saturday than sit idle, because training is never the same as playing.
Yeah.
So it can be sometimes with the team, with the games to play at the end of the year, they've got the continuity because they've got 7 or 8 games to play. So they've always got a fixture.
How frustrating is it having this disparity in the number of games played at this stage in the season, because you can't really assess where anybody is? For instance, Ramsey have only played 7 matches, whereas St Mary's have played 13. Colby have played 13.
Well, I know people, when we did agree that we wouldn't talk about UEFA, but I'm just going to chuck UEFA in here for one particular reason.
Quick.
Right, for one particular reason is that if we had more floodlit pitches, which the money would provide from UEFA, we wouldn't have a disparity, because we would be able to play midweek, and it wouldn't interrupt, the interleague wouldn't interrupt us, because we could all go down and watch the interleague on a Saturday and then play the league game on a Wednesday. We don't have enough facilities in the Isle of Man to play midweek night matches, and if we had those facilities, the whole season could all be ran and finished on the date that it's supposed to finish. We could organise more free time for training for the interleague, for Alan Vannin or Canifa or whatever, but we need the facilities for the league to run correctly, and we just don't have them.
I'll just offer Tony the chance to come back on that if you'd like to.
No, it's I fully support Chris. I'd love to have floodlights up at Corinthians, but the problem that's coming in at the moment, which you know, Chris, and you're not one of the clubs in Corinthians on, nobody wants to play under lights midweek. I know the Friday night is the one at St John's. Corinthians love playing there, and I know St George's like playing there. What a great facility. The boys can play on the Friday night. They've got the weekend to themselves. Most of the other clubs don't want to play, so what's the point of putting floodlights up just to say you've got them? Because the clubs have got to, or maybe not the players. I think the players want to play. I think on a Friday night. It's the committees.
The players want to play, but the point is, right? We're talking about football here, and we're talking about rules and regulations. If a rules and regulations state, here comes the fixtures list, if your game is cancelled on a Saturday and that pitch is available on a Wednesday, then that should be a rule and regulation. End of. There isn't, would you like to play? No, you will play. And if you don't play, and if it's down as a rule, that would also curtail people going off to watch your Evertons, Man United, Liverpool shopping trips. I'm sorry, it's a rule. If you want to go away, that's your choice. That's the risk that you will take. So I don't buy it. You don't.
But the club, sorry Chris to interrupt, but the clubs brought the rule in to have the choice not to play on the Friday. So this is the problem that you've got. The FA don't make the rules up, it's the clubs.
We're straying off topic. We're straying off topic, so I'll bring you back to, well, I'll give you a quick question, because we've only got a couple of minutes left.
I thought we was here for another hour.
I know, don't worry. Maybe we'll have to get you back in the new year. Is the hunger going from some of the players who've enjoyed unlimited success over the past 7 seasons, well, even further back than that, are they now thinking, well, we've won everything, the desire isn't there that it was several seasons ago, if you like?
From my perspective, if the hunger is going from the players, it won't be the hunger, it'll be the player leaving. End of.
And I wouldn't have expected any other answer. The question I asked you before about resting and playing, you said there's not a question, players don't need a rest. I suppose I'll use a different word then. I'll rephrase the question. When do you decide you're going to drop someone? Is that a couple of
when they're not performing,
below par performances?
When they're not performing.
But how much faith do you show in them? These are players who have won you title after title after title. So are they?
Players know, don't they?
Yeah, I think a player knows. A player knows whether he's played well or not. There will be one or two that will always argue and think that they play well every time, but then they're playing with their head, well and truly in the clouds. But by and large, if the lads that we've got, they're honest with themselves. But we will succeed as a group and we will fail as a group. And that comes from the manager through to the coaches, to the players, to the physio, to everybody. We will never single out individuals. We do this together. We win together or we lose together. So the way to get it back on track is to work together.